In this video, I'm going to go over a tutorial on how you can set up your own obstacle course for the POPAT test. Because let's face it, there's not a lot of facilities around where you can practice the test on a regular basis, or at least get yourself as familiar with the test on a regular basis. So these kinds of things can really help outside of all that. So when you do go to a facility to do whether a practice test or official test, you're going to be a lot more ready versus coming into it being a complete unknown. There are a few things that you're going to need to set up your own course. Cones for sure you're going to need. I suggest getting all 18-inch high cones, and I would suggest getting about 10 of them as well. At the very least, 4 should be 18 inches high, and that's going to be for the hurdles that you have to jump over. So if only 4 that you have for 18 inches, perfectly fine. Everything else could be just those flat discs or short cones that you can set up in place. But if you can get all 10 being 18 inches, great, but at least 4 of them will need to be 18 inches. You're also going to need 2 dowel rods so that you can place it on top of the hurdles, on top of the cones, I should say, for the hurdles. And then the mat here that you see, this is an optional mat. So this is 6 feet in length. It doesn't necessarily have to be this wide, although it's helpful to be wide. But as long as you have something that is 6 feet in length, perfectly fine. If you do not have a mat, you can always just mark off 2 lines on the ground. So a line to indicate takeoff and a line to indicate landing. But what's nice about a mat is that you have a visual to look at as you approach it. Otherwise, let's go ahead and get started with how to set up your obstacle course for the POPAT test. Now, before you start laying out your cones for the obstacle course, there are a few things you'll need to do. The first is you'll need to know what are the distances for each cone. Usually most distances are 5, 10, or 20 feet, and rather than having a measuring tape and trying to measure out each portion of it, what you want to do, or what you can do, I should say, it's kind of a quick and dirty method, is to take a number of steps for a certain distance, and then you can use your steps to be able to lay out where the cones have to go. So, just grab a measuring tape, lay it out about 10 feet long, and then that way you can count the number of steps it's going to take to walk 10 feet. And the reason I use 10 feet is, as mentioned just prior, most of the distances between markers are anywhere from 5 to 20 feet. So 10 is just a nice multiple of all of that. So what I'll do is just find where the end 10-foot mark is here. I'm going to reference it with the middle of my foot. Now, it doesn't have to be the middle of the foot. It could be the front, it could be the back. I just tend to use the middle of the foot as an easier reference point. And then from here, I'm going to walk 10 feet and see how many steps it takes me to walk that particular distance. Now, you want to make sure that it's regular steps here. You're not taking wide steps, you're not taking short steps. Just make it a regular walk. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So just a little bit, if I take 5 steps, it's just a little bit beyond the 10-foot distance. But just for ease of math, I'm going to use 5 steps for now. Now, depending on where you do set up, whether it's outdoors or indoors, you want to have at least 90 feet of space in terms of length and at least 30 feet of width to be able to set up the course. And the reason I say that is, particularly if you're indoors, you don't want to be close to any kind of walls or obstacles that you might be bumping into. So ideally, if you're indoors, a basketball court would be a great space to use. If you're outdoors, a basketball court again is going to be helpful. Tennis courts will be helpful as well. But even if you're out on a soccer field or a football field, anywhere where you have good amount of space and it's nice and flat and there's very little debris on the ground as well. But this method that I just showed you here, taking the number of steps to figure out your distances for the 10 feet, that's going to be helpful for when you start setting up the markers for the test. So once you know the space that you're using and the number of steps that you're going to take to walk the 10 feet, we're going to start laying out 5 cones in a straight line that are spaced about 20 feet from each other. So I'll start things off here in the corner. I'll lay down my first marker. I'm going to walk 10 feet, set the next marker down, walk another 10 feet, set the next marker down until I've set down all 5 cones. So now that we've laid down the length of the course, we need to determine the width of the course. And so the second cone that you see here and the third cone, we're going to be placing 2 cones to either side of them 10 feet from the middle. So 1 cone to the left, 1 cone to the right, and I'll go ahead and get that set up right now. Now that I've established the width of the obstacle course, the cones, second and third cone that you see in the middle, I can remove them from the spot. Although for now, I'm just going to leave them there as a reference point. But the next marker that I want to set up will be the stairs. So the 4th cone that you see before the end cone, that indicates the middle of the stairs. What I'm now going to do is place a cone in front of it and behind it that are about 5 feet from the middle. That indicates the start of the stairs and the end of the stairs. Now that the stairs have been established, I want to set up for the 18-inch hurdles. So I got my 4 cones here. I've taken the middle cone that was here, as well as the third one, and the 4th cone that was the middle. I'm now going to set up for the hurdles. And I'm going to start at this cone here. And we're going to have the hurdles go this direction. So the first hurdle is going to be set up 10 feet from here, and the second hurdle will be 10 feet from the first hurdle. Now that the hurdles have been established, the last obstacle that we have to set up on the course will be the 6-foot jump. So again, if you have a mat, a yoga mat is perfectly fine to use a yoga mat, but just as long as you're able to set up, if you don't have a mat in place, just set up 2 lines, whether you use some kind of chalk mark or some very thin stick, whatever the case may be, you want to indicate a takeoff point and a landing point that are 6 feet from each other. The landing point, though, you want to make sure that it's going to be 5 feet away from this cone here. So that's roughly going to be about 2.5 steps or so. 2.5. And there you have it. Now before I finish off this video, I just want to do a quick demo lap of the obstacle course. So again, for the POPAT, everything is laid out as close to the real deal as possible, so that when you actually go into the actual test situation, whether it's practice or official, you're going to be a lot more comfortable, or at the very least a lot more familiar of where you got to go and how you got to approach each aspect of the obstacle course. Of course, we don't have the stairs itself, so where you see the 2 cones, the 2 bright ones at the end there just before the very end cone, that indicates the beginning and end of the stairs. What we'll do in that case is just do some high knee runs on the spot. So running through the demonstration lap here, I'm going to begin at this cone. I'm going to make my way to the first cone on the left hand side, and then I'm going to cut, approach the mat jump over, run around the cone, and then do my high knees right here all the way through, run around the cone, do my high knees again, going to my right, take the hurdles, and then make my way to the start. And I can practice my laps, practice my pacing skills, practice whatever I need to practice. Even if it's only one particular section that I need to practice, I got everything set up as closely as possible to the real deal.